Welcome, reanimated fans. I'm AJ Conrad, and on the West Coast is my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hello.
Today, we are wrapping up the Silo series, last two episodes, 9 and 10. But before we get to that, have a couple of very tiny news tidbits over this 4th of July weekend. First up, Kevin Bacon is adding even more connections out there. He is attached or starring in the series on Amazon called The Bondsman, and it's a Blumhouse TV production series. This is 8 episodes long, and I think they're about half an hour apiece. And the premise is that he is, an undead bounty hunter. So he wakes up and has to find a new life as a zombie bounty hunter. So I don't know. Thoughts on that, Stuart?
Thoughts are I am not optimistic about this one.
Yeah. But there's 8 episodes, and they're only half an hour long a piece, so I think we can do it. We could probably do a little marathon-y thing with it, so we'll see how that works. Yeah, and that's going to be on Amazon Prime.
And
Um,
this news just dropped on Variety yesterday or 2 days ago. And I'm actually like the thing that I'm most surprised at is that Amazon Prime is ordering new shows.
yeah.
Like I kind of thought everybody was done. It kind of feels like none of these businesses are going to be ordering new shows, but this is one, and I think it's not going to play well for them. It's apparently a completely original
Yeah,
script.
and that's so I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. And the showrunner for this is the same guy who did Carnival Row for Amazon,
Well, the
which
second season, yeah, which was
that's the second
okay.
season, yeah. But it's definitely, I don't know. He like the premise that he's like this kind of like backwoods hunter that's kind of a misanthrope, I think. And now this is his second chance at life. Has a little bit of, at least according to what this is saying, has a little bit of a warm bodies-esque feel, so that worries me a little bit. But I like Kevin Bacon, so I'm gonna watch this and we'll see how it goes.
And there it is.
Yep. You don't have to watch it, Stuart, but I might watch
I
it.
mean, well, yeah, well, I think we'll have a look at it. If it's basically just iZombie reframed,
Yeah.
count me out for sure.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. So that was one bit of news, and the other one is actually I'm really excited to watch this. There is a new anime zombie series called Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead. Is that what it is? The full name?
Yeah, and we've talked about this
Yep.
title many times. I think we might have even talked about the anime, but now it's about to drop.
Right. And that comes out really soon, July 9th. So I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah, and it's going to be Netflix and Hulu. And in theory, there's a live action version in production somewhere, although there's been nothing about that lately.
I am excited to watch this, so we'll have to stay tuned, and I'm sure we will be doing a recap and review of this. So that's about it for the news before we get into the last 2 episodes of Silo Series 1. And just at the outset, I have really enjoyed this series. I think the last couple episodes, a couple of slow moments, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this whole thing.
Yeah, I've also enjoyed it top to bottom, and you know what? Mostly what I've enjoyed about it is I've been able to watch this with my wife because it doesn't have zombies in it. So I don't know, like you open the floodgates.
Mm,
We've enjoyed it. She is still stressed out by the show. She thinks that there's too much tension. I'm like,
yeah.
this is small fry. This is small potatoes.
Yeah, Bill will not watch it with me. So that's all good. Too stressful. He may end up doing it because he really is a huge fan of Ms. Ferguson, very much
Mhm.
so. So that's the only thing he keeps asking me about. He was like, "Oh, the cast is so amazing," and I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Your favorite, Common and Rebecca Ferguson," which is kind of true. So it's kind of made for me. The only thing that it is missing is Pedro Pascal. So
Mhm.
that would have made it perfect. But other than that, it's, he's caught sort of the edges of it and shows more interest in this than most things. So maybe he'll eventually watch it. Maybe he'll watch it before we get the series 2 out, which they're currently filming already, apparently. And
What? Where'd you see
yeah,
that?
and apparently they think that it's going to be released in 2024. I feel a little, I don't know. That seems a little bit ambitious to me, but yeah, apparently they are already filming the second series.
Cool.
So that's cool. Um, so in any case, do you wanna get into the Getaway?
Yeah. Sorry, I just looked at Hugh Howey's Twitter, and he's retweeting or he's tweeting an article by Paul Tassi calling his show the best sci-fi show on TV. You can't get away from these Forbes boys. They're
Nope.
they're everywhere, either saying your stuff is the best or the worst. There's very little middle ground. Anyway,
Yeah.
well, yeah, let's get into it. This one, The Getaway, episode 9, it started after the literal cliffhanger, or jumping off the railing, from episode 8, with Juliet going over the stairs. And we start right there with her landing hard, but on a landing, as we kind of expected. And everybody else is struggling to catch up to her. In fact, that's kind of the next 2 episodes, people trying to catch up to her. It's like one of the characters in these 2 episodes whose story I think it's a little muddled, and maybe they're just doing a lot of setup for the next season, is Paul Billings. He
Yep.
immediately catches some flack for, aka or quote unquote letting her go.
Yeah, I also honestly, I kind of feel like Sims gets a little muddy too.
Yeah,
Um,
he just kind of starts barking a lot, like he
yeah,
just
like he becomes less interesting and
yeah,
more sort of one-dimensional, which I don't really love.
true.
Um,
His
so
wife turns out is like super interesting though, so
yes, so that's cool. But yeah. But yeah, continue about Mr. Billings.
just I mean, that's kind of it in this. Right away is he's immediately being questioned, like, did you let her go? Because kind of miraculously, I would say, Jules can disappear, and she vanishes and becomes sort of like a ninja for this episode. They just cannot catch up to her, even though there's
Cameras everywhere.
3 or 4 people chasing her. She just has too much of a lead, even though she probably also has a twisted ankle.
Right. But she's a ghost. She knows like how to make herself scarce. She's from the down deep, so
But she's not in the down deep.
she isn't, but she's got the survival skills built in.
Yeah.
So
We get the first scene of Bernard and his little keychain, which is not explained,
nope.
but I think we have a sense of what it is. This first shot that we get of it, it's on his desk. He's in a meeting with Sims. It has the number 18 on it, and it's like blinking red.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that, 18 is this really important number. HA and I know what this means also in the grand scheme of the meta plot.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really understand what this keychain is. So I think they're doing something a little differently.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that you know, we'll see what happens in the next season, but yeah, they're starting to sort of lay the groundwork for that whole plot line. My guess is that so much of it is, with the way that the books are written, things like that, they're trying to give you some kind of a signal plot line that's a little bit more obvious, I suppose. Um, but yeah, that will definitely be significant as we go down the line.
Yeah. We have a scene with Billings, and maybe I spoke too soon, because this is a kind of an interesting scene. He's basically, these 2 episodes kind of like, it's a lot about the syndrome, right? Like it's a lot about his tremors and whether he can still be sheriff even in this new post Jules life or world. He is no longer even remotely her ally. Now he's kind of just like his own ally. Like he's just trying to survive and keep his job. But he has this conversation with his wife where he admits that he beat up a kid when he was 17. And apparently he had the syndrome even that long ago, which feels like a long time to have a degenerative sort of disease.
Yeah, and he knew that the other kid had it, and like basically has been hiding his whole entire life.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because his wife is very much like, you have a child to think of. You should go back to judicial where this isn't an issue because you're not allowed to hold the job of the sheriff. Like this is going to be a huge thing. And he is like basically like, you think I don't understand that because he's been hiding this his entire life. So it's an interesting scene between the two of them and gives some context for and the interesting thing is how well versed he is on the pact and knows all of those things and adheres to it. And that's a little bit of what Juliet called him out about, is that he adheres to the law of the pact all the time, but this is definitely something that affects him personally, and so he colors outside of the lines, or he's willing to take risks. And I think that that's a bit of why he's willing to help Juliet to some extent, is
Yeah.
because whether, like, there is definitely this question as we go into this series, like when you think about the pact and some of the things that are in there and what people are adhering to, you could argue that some of the things that Juliet is doing seems more in line with some of the the laws or the well-being of the silo that the pact is supposedly supporting. And he is seeing other people like Bernard and Sims very much doing things that are against the spirit of the pact, whatever that is. And remember, he also saw that book.
Well,
And
he's seeing it now in this
yeah, yeah.
episode. And this is like, so yeah, him like, I think this is actually a good tack for his character. And this episode does let him kind of go
Mhm.
outside of those lines even more by breaking into a crime scene,
Yep.
finding pieces of the two-way mirror that hide the cameras, and then finding, I don't know, this little weird epiphany he has, like, oh, she hides things inside vanities, because he found the Pez dispenser in
Hmm.
Trumbull's Turnbull's or whatever his name is apartment in the vanity. But this memory prompts him to take the vanity out of the wall and find the wrapped up Georgia tourist book, which he looks at for like the entire episode. He looks at it for a long time and then rips out one page and burns the rest of it.
Right.
So that keeping that one page kind of also illustrates that sort of like 5% of him that is okay breaking rules, right?
Yeah. And I mean, look, and remember, he's doing this. He wants to find out more. He's still in the dark about a lot of the stuff that Juliet is doing. And it's interesting to kind of watch him have these epiphanies and do things that he definitely would have not done when we first met him.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I don't know, maybe a little bit of it is that he does know that he's doing things that are not necessarily, um, they're certainly not in line with what the pack says and what he's supposed to be doing. So he seems a little bit more willing to take certain risks. But not too many, obviously, because he's got other things to think about. And so there is, so I kind of loved his interaction when he did find the travel book, because there's a lot to take in there, and Billings, like, he is an incredible actor. So just his facial expressions alone when he's looking at the book, I think were kind of amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
um,
that guy's been impressive this
oh, the
whole
whole
show.
thing, but I really kind of loved that little
What's
moment.
his? I just want to look up his name because we've said it before, but I've also already
I
forgot.
know this is the COVID brain kicking.
Oh, his name is Chinaza Uche.
Yep.
I'm
He's been
sure
in
he's
like,
English. Like,
yes, he is, I think.
there's no way he's not.
Yeah, and he's been in like quite a few things.
Oh,
So
Scottish born, based
mm,
in the U.S. So maybe that's a real accent.
semi.
Okay. So the billing story, I think I was thinking more of the 10th episode when I was like, he kind of disappears out of the story a little bit. He does have a scene in the 10th episode. Also, this one, it's a fairly significant amount of scenes. And like he's doing, like we've laid out, he's doing things that are in character, that are both by the book and absolutely not by the book. And he has a line early on in the episode, like, I'm gonna find the person who got away from me and make this right, which seems like that's kind of thing he hasn't said before. He generally has been like, I'm gonna back up Jules because she's the boss, and but now yeah, that does not seem to be
Yep.
his approach. He also probably feels like, well, she punched me while I was having a spasm and then got away and made me look bad, so
Right.
he's got an axe to grind. Meanwhile, on 22, is that the floor that Sims lives on? The we see his son who has that recognizable hair, and the wife who we have not met before, and they're like walking home when a couple of judicial raiders walk up and they're like, "We're here to escort you home," right in front of their door,
Yep.
which I thought was funny. And she immediately is like, "You're not coming in here." And I was a raider for 12 years, and there's a couple of significant things going on here. Of course, this becomes even more significant when you go inside and there's Jules is in there, and she's overheard this interaction too, which she uses against Mrs. Sims later. We don't learn Sims's wife's name. I think is it Mrs. Sims the whole time.
I don't know. We call her Mrs. Sims, but she's a very cool character. She's a former raider herself. Um, and so it's kind of interesting how she acts towards the other raiders. She's very much like, you're not coming into my house. She's like very protective of her son. Um, there's like definitely a tension there. And, even sort of the way that they're interacting with her is kind of interesting. So I was actually wishing we get a little bit of her in this episode, but I was hoping she would pop up in the next one and didn't, but like, it's fine, but it makes me much more interested in Sim's life. And we don't really get to see that much of that. I mean, we already know that they had a hard time conceiving.
Yeah.
This is the son that was referenced in the last episode.
Yeah.
So we know how precious this is to her and to him. But
So
there's
precious, in fact, that he kind of bends the rules, or at least Bernard
Yep,
makes it sound like he has by assigning this
correct.
escort to his wife and
Yep.
son. This comes up later, and the show is taking Sims, who I don't remember if he is a character in the book, but they are kind of giving him Lucas Kyle's,
Yeah.
like the fact that there's a discussion between Sims and Bernard about, were you going to be my shadow? Could you still be? This is not a thing. This is a departure from the book narrative, as I recall. And it's different because I again, I'm like talking out of my butt because I don't even remember the details of the Lucas Kyle plot line. But when he was Bernard's shadow, he like kept a lot of his doubts about the system inside. Sims does not seem to have a lot of doubts about the system. Like that. I feel like that's the main difference. But his wife certainly seems to. So
Yep.
that's kind of fascinating. Inside, Jules puts gets them at gunpoint. Not the son. Like somehow they managed to put him in his bedroom and working on a project before she cuffs Mrs. Sims to a pole, and then is like, I'm gonna be doing some illegal stuff on your computer.
I know. It's interesting interactions between them because it's like sometimes what shows would tend to do is have this like weird bonding moment between them, and they don't do that here. Um, she is Mrs. Sims, whatever did they ever use her name? I don't think they
It's
do.
Camille apparently, but
Okay.
yeah, they don't tell us her name as far as I know.
So you know, I really love how she's like completely on guard, completely having her own specific goals here because she knows that her kid's in the other room.
It's just
And
cool to have another badass lady opposite Rebecca Ferguson too.
yeah, and she really is this like other side of things, which and she's outside of this other group of people that we've seen. So I really liked this dynamic. And they definitely don't trust each other. And there's enough doubt, I think, that Camille has about what is going on in the silo, but she's certainly not going to share that with Juliet. But I do like, and even Juliet's ignorance, just sort of like how things work. Like Camille definitely knows that they're going to come in and track them down the minute that she like plugs in the hard drive. But like, I thought that knowledge and it was pretty cool, because she's got much more sort of she's not totally in the dark. She's got much more of a knowledge of the inner workings about what happens in the silo than Juliet does. And it's kind of this is just like a fascinating scene between the two of them.
It is, and there's layers of the fascination. One of them that I thought was kind of a questionable choice is she opens the door right after she says goodbye to those Raider guards and says,
Yep.
she looks down and there's broken glass or mirrors on the floor, and she still goes into the house
Yeah.
before like securing her son in his bedroom and getting her gun or
Yep.
trying to find a weapon. That was a silly thing, but what was really smart, I thought, was once Jules locks her up, she then like takes anything that could possibly be a weapon from like within 3 or 4 feet. I thought
Yep.
that was cool, even though Mrs. Sims is making fun of Jules, like I could beat you up with my small, my pinky. uh Turns out she actually has like a box of hammers in her kitchen cabinet, so it's a good
Yep.
thing that Jules did that.
Yep.
I just thought
Well,
that was a nice detail.
but the thing is, you think that that it is a bad move when she first tells the Raiders to go away, but then the conversation that Juliet has with her later tells you why she did that.
The
And
one
I thought
she
that,
the one that the Sims family has together, where she's like, oh, not they're not always given they're given orders not to shoot, but sometimes
yep,
they shoot anyway. That one.
yep, that whole
Yeah.
thing. But also she has the conversation with Juliet says, I noticed you didn't let them in the apartment and whatever. And when Juliet is saying how she had this experience and the two of them have some kind of an understanding about the fact that the Raiders are not always a force of good or protection. And so I thought that was kind of a cool thing. And they don't overtly say this, but this was
Hmm.
probably why she was like, well, I'm a badass and I can handle whatever the heck's in my apartment,
Yeah,
right?
if there's going to be a crossfire in my apartment, I will be the one with the gun, probably.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, something
I
like
thought
that.
that was kind of a nice little thing that they did without hitting you over the head with it.
There's a lot of cool stuff about these two. So and I kind of wish there was more of it. But yeah, like Mrs. Sims gets out of her handcuffs, but then it doesn't go the way you might think. Like she doesn't come and clobber Jules over the head after Jules. And honestly, the reaction of Rebecca Ferguson that Jules has when George's face pops up on the computer, she starts watching a video, and he's like, "This is called a video," and she's losing it. Right? She's so distracted. I'm honestly, maybe that's why Camille did not come and hit her over the head, because she was also probably like, "Whoa, what have you found? This
What
is
is this
crazy."
thing? Uh,
Instead, she tells her to run. Right? Like that's crazy. Like this is why we're excited. I think about this character. We think she's probably going to be a big deal in the next season,
yeah, I hope so because she was
or
pretty.
she'll have some major pivotal role. She might not be like a major character, but she's definitely going to catalyze something else at the very least.
Something, and she's got her own motivations and specific motivations, and it's kind of interesting to see the different family dynamics and the things that they're doing. You both see it with Billings and his wife. You're seeing it with Sims' family as well, and specifically with Camille, and very much this idea that okay, you have the silo, you have these things that you're doing, but we really need to protect this family. And I feel like Camille has other ideas and she implies certain things when she and Sims are talking later, just about what their overall goal is. So I find those parallels really interesting. So and you kind of see hints of this in other places, even with Juliet's dad, like how upset he was that Juliet had thought that he had betrayed his wife, that he was upset that his wife thought that. And so there is this sort of level of trust within these different family units
Hmm.
that basically take precedence over everything else. And so and when that trust is broken, it's like it's devastating. So you see it with Juliet, you see it with um definitely with just some of the things that Billing's wife is saying to him, when she accuses him of basically betraying the family because of not betraying, but like not thinking about what his priorities should be. And you see it when Camille basically accuses Sims of the same thing. So I thought that those were kind of nice little like themes that you see, and I think that they are definitely going to play out in the next season.
Yeah.
Um,
We've also got a scene with Lucas Kyle, Avi Nash, and Bernard, Tim Robbins, where it goes really badly for Lucas. We know that this character did not get a lot of play this season either. I'm feeling a little bit of like Walking Dead flashbacks where they didn't really use Avi Nash as
I
much as he
know. I
probably.
was having the same thing.
Yeah, like you know what though, they've got this big great cast. They've given Common a lot of the Lucas stuff that we would have expected. So what is there for him? It's just and that just makes honestly his fate even more unfair. You know he's going to come back in season 2 and he's going to be important in some way. We just don't know exactly how. But he basically gets sentenced to the mines by Bernard for the crime of not narking. Like you knew that she had a relic and you chose to not report it is the crime that sends him to the mines. This is just like, you know, the final piece of evidence that we need to show that this is a despotic government, that Bernard is kind of a tyrant. Like the punishment I don't think fits the crime, but maybe in the silo this is actually just normal, par for the course.
Well, and I guess that's kind of where I was trying to figure out what will happen with this character in the next season. I also was upset because this seems like a weird way to go. And again, I mean, maybe they are using Sims in the way that they were going to, that Lucas's character sort of plays out in the books, but I don't know how, because so much of it was that Bernard didn't suspect him of disloyalty, or he had very small thinking. He did not think so, and he didn't think that Lucas would betray him in that way. And I don't want to give away too many spoilers for the next one, but Lucas's sort of knowledge of IT and things like that. So I'm just curious how they plug him in, his storyline, into the next one, and maybe they are able to do something. If he's in the mines, he's in the down deep, so maybe that gives him some access to walk and other people.
Hmm.
But I'm curious to see what they do. It does feel like they've taken a lot of the more interesting things, parts of his storyline, and given them to Sims. So we'll have to
Yeah.
see how it wraps up. But
And complicating things even more, they take one of his other interesting things, that he's a member of IT and has like systems knowledge, and they introduce a new character called Danny,
yep,
the cocky little cocky redheaded hacker. And this guy also works for, maybe he works for, I think he works for IT. He shows an IT badge, but he's clearly just like a hacker. I love this character, and Patrick Kennedy and him make like a nice little team of wise talking, morally gray dudes. So that is in this episode, right, where those two guys show up. Yes,
I think so. But
that's
they,
kind of her next stop after she leaves Sims. Jules goes to Patrick Kennedy and hooks up with this hacker.
yep,
Because they watch the rest of the George video together. But by introducing Danny, like again, Lucas Kyle's importance is diminished.
yep.
So it is curious why then they cast someone to as recognizable to us at Reanimated. It feels
I
like a person.
know
It feels like it's getting personal. That's all.
it does, and I really love this actor, so I want to see him more. So I was really sad, but
Yeah.
hopefully that means that he will have more of a role in the next one. I really hope so.
And hey, he was doing some work in that scene with Bernard where Tim Robbins kept slanting, like bashing his hand on the desk, and Avi Nash would like jump out of his chair and eyes widen. And it was probably a lot of fun to shoot that little scene.
It was. But we also have to, Juliet's sort of little journey in this episode and the next, is is she's gone into this whole thing just trying to solve George's murder, despite feeling and being told that he is not the person she thought he was. And so finding this video was like hugely impactful to her, because basically he says, he gives her a lot of the things, although he's hinting at other things that she's gonna have to figure out. But
Yeah,
um
I don't. The like the puzzle of the door is annoying.
yeah,
Like,
that
why
was
not just
like,
say what it is, George? This is, you
yeah.
know.
um,
Also, it plays out her fears that he had kind of gotten close to her to use her. Again, I don't really understand what he was going to use her for.
Yeah, me neither. But other than just being,
Her
I don't
influence, maybe.
guess. But in any case, it's like she's like, oh, he did love me. So, but that she then gives her this mission that she's got to find the door underneath the silo. And this is um and this is like the big reveal is that they all see the sort of the footage of the really clear outside the silo footage, and
Hmm.
that's like a huge deal, like that, this thought that they are all being lied to. And this is sort of, it is implied that this is what George knew, and this is what Allison knew, and Halston knew. And so the whole conspiracy of the silo is kind of coming to a head.
Yep.
Um,
And now
and
more and more people are seeing this video, and then that's kind of where we launch off in the next episode. But we also have this disturbing scene where the Sims family are talking, or husband and wife are talking about their one ambition and one goal.
Mhm.
They don't actually say what it is, but I assume it's to be Bernard, the next Bernard,
Yep.
because they know what he is.
Yep.
Um, and then his son is like, "Daddy, are you gonna? Is that lady coming back?" And he's like, "Nope, we're gonna take care of that." And he's like, "Good. I hope you send her out to clean."
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like, wow, dark.
So I don't know, Timmy Sims. You might not be a redeemable character even at age 7 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Messed up. So yeah, is there anything else on the Getaway episode that you wanted to address?
No, again, I still like the little puzzle parts of the puzzle, the mystery. I really think that this was great storytelling and good acting, and um the sort of breadcrumbs they're leaving to get into this next episode and to wrap it up as much as they are able to is kind of cool. But I think we can get into the final episode of season one, which is outside.
Also, oh gosh, why can I never remember who's the director? These last two were directed both directed by Adam Bernstein.
Mhm.
Lakefia Dalco wrote The Getaway, and Fred Golan wrote Outside.
Yep.
So the showrunner did not return. Like I mentioned that before. He wrote the pilot and the 5th episode, Janitor's Boy. So
Mm.
just curious. Uh, so into episode 10, finale.
Yeah. So the things that I enjoy about this episode is the um she's working with Danny and with Patrick, and they manage to broadcast the whole the outside footage to the whole silo. And
Well,
I
they have
do.
to do some pretty crazy stuff to
Yep.
get to one of those nodes,
Yep.
which I was also like, one of the things that is occurring to me is I'm seeing Patrick Kennedy apparently lives in the up top, which is kind of surprising. But they're on 22 still. They've got a long way to go to get down if they're going all the way to the bottom. Um, and they're using those scavenging tubes, which she used to work in scavenging. She has a little bit of knowledge at least about the schedule of that. And they get there and use the node and start broadcasting the video until Bernard, who in the camera room, is able to turn off every monitor. But what a crazy scene that is, when he's like, "Everybody, shut your eyes, look away."
Yep.
I thought that was really
It's
cool.
like Raiders of the Lost Ark looking away from the Ark of
Yeah,
the um but the thing is that if this has been broadcasting throughout the entire silo, everybody's seeing it. So where is it going to go from there, and what will this cause in terms of like a cascade of actions? Who knows? But Bernard can't tell the whole silo to turn away, right? So
right. So it depends on how many other screens there are.
right,
Whether is this playing just in the cafeterias? Is it playing on everybody's little computer that they seem to have in their house?
right.
Maybe not every. Yeah.
Yeah. But then Bernard, really he shows his crazy IT skills and just shuts it down pretty quickly, or as quickly as he can. And so that's kind of interesting. And then they decide to go after, of course they're going to go after to Juliet and Danny and Patrick. And I love that in like the heat of the moment when Juliet and Danny and Patrick are running, Patrick still wants the watch, like, which I guess Juliet promised to him, and I think we can all guess that she's never going to give up that watch.
She was
But
just like, "Really now?" He's like, "This is the only thing I asked for," and they get arrested, not on
yeah,
screen, but they're caught. Like, God, who knows what their fate's going to be? And
yeah,
she tries to go down the tubes again, and then they keep throwing like air conditioners at her until she basically falls. I don't know how far she fell. It looked like it was kind of a long way, but all she gets is like a band-aid, basically.
Yep. And they pull her out before the AC comes down, crashing down. So, she's made it down there enough to talk to Walk and get like, um, you know, and look, they're in the down deep, and she basically tells Walk something. We don't know what, before they come and get her. And, you know, Mechanical is this is sort of like her home base, and her friend is the one that basically called Judicial. And uh
Knox did, yeah.
yeah, Knox did, and he and
She
like
basically says like he did the right thing. It was
yeah, like
like there's no upside.
right. I kind of thought, it's sort of where it was going here. I wasn't sure exactly because I knew kind of what needed to happen, but I was like, oh, are they gonna sort of have her go and find the door underneath? Like, how is that gonna work?
Mm.
But that's not what happened here. So they did indeed let Judicial capture her. It's weird how um like the Bernard character is still weirdly deferential to Juliet in strange ways. So he allows her certain dispensations, maybe because he knows he's going to put her out to clean. But basically he says, say you said stop denying you went outside, say you don't want to like appeal trial, and I'll let all your friends live. And she makes that deal with him because she really doesn't think that there's any other option. And but even like when they go up the stairs and she wants water, there's just like these weird little moments between them. And he even says these things to her, like, "Oh, you don't know what a danger you are to the silo." He's very confident that he's doing the right thing,
Hmm.
but there's also like he says some pretty like crazy, not crazy things, but like incredibly um charged things to her, like that she should never have been born, that
Oh
mistakes
yeah.
happen, and all this other stuff that's like really like it feels like there's more of a backstory to this. And I wonder if they're going to show something to do with her mother and him at some point.
If the system that they have in place to keep the wrong people from getting pregnant, you have to kind of wonder if her dad didn't like let
Right,
her mom get pregnant in a way,
right,
which would be interesting for the Jorah Mormont backbone quotient, which tends to be fairly low. Although the last time he had a conversation with Sims in the last episode, he was just like not really giving him very much. So
right. But
he's
there's also the question though, because it's like, again, it's sort of, you have to let a few things go. But if they have these all these different sort of checks and balances in place, and if they have all these things in place, um how would Juliet have gotten so far in this little journey? Because it doesn't seem to totally make sense. I mean, if her mother wasn't actually supposed to get pregnant, why not take her out early, right? Like, I don't know.
hmm.
So there's a few things that don't necessarily add up, but I think you just have to kind of let it go to enjoy the show.
Yeah. So one of the I agree with you that he gives her a lot of give and take for her saying, okay, sure, I'll willingly go outside, and I will stop saying that I didn't say I wanted to go outside, even though it doesn't feel like he needs that really. He can just
Right.
shove her outside no matter what.
Right. And he can even
Um,
say she never said it, right? It doesn't really, anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
but so not in addition to like not arresting everybody in Mechanical, he lets her go into the camera room, which seems like a huge deal, and she watches George's final moments, where it turns out he kind of really did kill himself. Like he wasn't thrown over the edge. He was doing some sort of theater, uh, suicide theater, where it was like, well, I don't want to end up like Gloria Hildebrand or being put outside or tortured or whatever. So, and he, I guess it was to preserve the location of the hard drive.
But I also see why he did it, because like otherwise he would have been tortured, and he didn't want to do that either. So at least he did it on his terms, but it was a pretty sad little heartbreaking moment when she saw that. But you do wonder why Bernard let her see it there. Like, is it just that he's enjoying the fact that he has her under his power and he knows she's going to go out? I guess to him it doesn't matter because he knows she's going to die. Um
The fact
And
that he's saying George did this here because he knew there was a camera here. Is there a message in that in his act? The way he like crosses his arms and looks at the camera and then
well, I think it's hoping that Juliet would eventually figure out and see that. So I think that's what the implication is.
I guess
But yeah. In any case,
Walker is also doing some crazy stuff. Like she is, challenging her agoraphobia and
mhm.
goes outside because she's had a thought about the heat tape, the
Yep.
heat tape subplot of this whole show, which we've been talking about almost every episode. But I didn't realize that it was going to come back here because what's interesting is in the book, the people who make the suits for the cleaners are like independently trying to make their suits better all the time, right? Like
Mhm.
they come to Holston before he cleans and they're like, oh, I've changed out these filters and I think you're gonna see a real improvement in the performance of the suit. Like that's just something that's happening. I don't
Right.
know if Walker or if someone in mechanical did it on the sly in the book for Jules. But that's clearly what's happening here. She goes to her friend someone she probably hasn't seen in like 25 years. She
Yep.
goes to this woman's house and is like, you know, we can assume, I don't think we see the whole conversation, but it's like, look, use this good tape and
Yep.
that's going to change everything. So
Yep.
that's pretty interesting. And like Walker has had a lot of screen time in this season, is a very important character. So it's interesting to see how that develops.
We did forget to mention just because he doesn't, and it's weird that he doesn't have such a big role in this particular episode, but Billings basically tells his wife, is confronted by Sims, tells
Yeah,
his wife that Sims knows has a syndrome, but is making an exception.
which didn't happen on screen either, right? We
Nope.
see we see that he gets called out for holding his hands,
Hmm.
but then he's next thing we know he's in his apartment telling his wife like they're gonna let me be sheriff anyway, which just means that they have leverage over him now. And
Right, right. But that's pretty much it. We see some sort of like shots of him and his how he's taking in the fact that Juliet's going to be put out to clean, but we don't really get a lot with him
And
otherwise.
some of this is significant, HA, because the sheriff is the one who's supposed to read the text to the
Right,
prisoner.
and he isn't.
Because
And
Holston made a whole big deal about that with his wife, right? That was his whole thing. He's gonna like, even though I'm crying, this is my job as sheriff. And
yep,
yet, exactly, we don't like it's done by Bernard in the
yep.
Jules ceremony. All Billings does is push the button. So that was pretty,
I mean, I think you can make the assumption that he is, truly a puppet because
yeah.
they have this leverage over him. So
But
that
even the
is
ceremonial stuff they're not letting him do. Like that's pretty wild because it's basically he is a ceremonial position now if he's a puppet, but they're not
yep.
even letting him do that. So I think that is actually extremely telling.
Mhm.
Another thing that is pretty telling is this one of the last conversations between Bernard and Jules, where she says, "Why aren't you doing anything about the door at the bottom of the silo?" And Tim Robbins just has this look on his face where Bernard clearly has no idea what she's talking
Yep.
about, and then
Yep.
just says, "Oh, well, there are many secrets in the silo." And I just thought,
Yeah, it's
God damn,
incredibly
he's
like,
good.
oh yeah, no, totally. And he absolutely does not this was news to him. So
How do you
anyway,
do that with your face? Like,
I don't know, but he was amazing. He's amazing. And I honestly, again, the cast and the scenes between these actors are just phenomenal. And so, um, and from beginning to end. And so I did really love and then there's this lovely little scene between Juliet and her dad because she can't say anything
yeah,
and she has to hold herself back from saying something and her dad is just so heartbroken and he has made her something that her mom used to make her and there's that scene and then there's the scene where she gets the hush puppies
from
from Walk
Shirley.
and Shirley is like eat them all.
She's like,
Like not
literally,
very
only people
coded.
have only been bringing me food. I am so full. I
And
thought that
yeah,
was funny.
yeah, that was pretty funny. And so it's like she gets the little secret note and whatever. And so that is kind of a just a great thing. And then so she gets sent out to clean, and and Tim Robbins or Bernard has said that she has the biggest audience ever, and
Yeah.
everybody's watching her. And she goes out, and she sees the same scene, and you know, similar to Holston, she's realizing that it can't be real because she can't see Holston. And she vaguely knows where he is. And so she's got his badge. That was the other special, again, the special little
Yeah.
thing she was allowed. And she had specific requests. And so she got to bring Holston's badge. And even though she can't see him, she's kind of like putting it on him. And she doesn't clean.
Yep.
Um,
She drops the wool like a microphone,
yep.
and people are kind of losing their minds. And as soon as she finds Holston's body, which looks like a log in her
Yep.
vision,
Yep.
Bernard is like, she knows, and then he runs off and starts doing something, and I don't understand what he was doing, but it's something
I
to do
don't
with his
either.
keychain again, right? He plugs it
Something.
into something and he's typing. I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know what he was up to, but
I don't
mostly
either.
this is like I don't know how long this last few scenes was where she's outside. I feel like my notes, that's like a third of my notes is her outside and what she's seeing and doing. It must have
Yeah.
taken a few minutes.
Yeah. And, she's um finally the sort of the little VR screen that she's got in front of her dissipates somehow.
Once she
I
gets
don't,
up to that ridge line that nobody's
yeah,
ever
I guess
made it to.
maybe the signal ends or something like that, but um and the tape holds. They do a nice little shot of the tape on her
Yeah.
scene. And Bernard's really losing his mind. So is everybody in the silo because she's just kind of nobody's ever gone over the hill.
Yeah, but also like nobody really needs to lose their mind because there was a cleaning 2 weeks ago. The sensors look fine. Like it's not even that messy.
I don't think it's that. I think it's the fact that nobody
Well,
has
yeah,
ever
that too. Nobody's
and
ever not cleaned, but they didn't really need a cleaning. So, but for whatever reason, she got the most people to show up. So that tells you that it wasn't about the view.
nope. So there is um yeah.
So she gets to the top of this little ridge. I don't know how much of this she is going to be aware of, but our view as the audience suddenly starts to spiral out and go up, and we see that she is in one of many craters with a city in the distance on the horizon, a ruined city.
Mhm.
So you could take from that they are one silo among many.
Right, because you see all the little circles on the ground.
Yeah.
And from her vantage point, I feel like she can kind of see that too. Um, that there's just these circles and it's the same kind of setup as her silo is in, but just all sort of like lined up and different distances from each other. Like so lined up as it was like planned, one supposes. And so that is the sort of big ending, is a little like drone shot of all of that, and that's it. Um, I was hoping we would get a little further than this particular scene, but I think, it's kind of full circle, and there's like a lot of symmetry in how the first part of it is with, Allison Holston going out to clean, and then she sort of closes the loop on that, so to speak, by actually making it over the hill. Um, and so I really am excited to see season two. I enjoyed this so thoroughly, and I'm very happy to hear that it's in production, or supposedly in production. I guess it didn't
I
get
think you're right. It started filming in late June, which is yesterday, in England, in the same studio as the first season was filmed. So they've just started filming, but
well,
they're
and
doing it.
apparently, I mean, but apparently they already had all the scripts and everything ready, so I think they were anticipating that it would get renewed.
Oh,
But they aren't being impacted by the writer's strike because it is filming over there, and
oh
because
gosh.
they already had the scripts and everything in place. Supposedly there may be like an actors guild strike, like a SAG strike. Um, so I don't
Well,
know if that will impact some things, but
yeah.
I think there's supposed to be one later this month. So we shall see. But in any case, I think that they're well into to filming this. So if they do that and finish up and then they do the post-production, I think we may see it in 2024, maybe around the same timeline. So we'll see.
So I just found, yeah, that I'm very excited for season two. This article that talks about the filming going on, the main set consists of 3 levels of stairs. So they have 3 levels, which we had talked about when we first started talking about this show. How many landings and whatnot do they have?
Yeah.
That must be that's super cool. Anyway, what a fun show. I mean, it was a slow burn. It was pretty tense, I guess, for some people. Compared to what we usually talk about, it wasn't that insane, but just being able to watch stuff like Tim Robbins do a lot with his face,
Oh gosh,
Rebecca Ferguson's intensity. This has been fun.
yeah. So I'm looking forward to season 2, but I'm very excited to talk about what we're going to talk about next, which I think is the Walking Dead spinoff, right?
Dead Isle Land,
Yep.
which has now been on the air for a few weeks, and I don't know that I'm seeing a lot of critical response to that.
Yeah, I think I haven't really seen a lot related to this. But I've also deliberately been trying to not see it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I toyed with the idea of just starting to watch it, and I was like, nah.
it's Dead City. I think
Dead
the
City.
original
Why am
name
I got
is,
Island in my head?
well,
Yeah.
because I think it was originally supposed to be Dead Isle or Island of the Dead or something like that.
Okay.
And then they changed it to Dead City. Um, I've caught a couple of things where it's like it'll like try to pop up things for me to read and I haven't. Because I don't want to be spoiled, but I'm sure I will be eventually. But I am really excited to watch this. So what are your thoughts about it since you haven't seen much either? I hope it's not bad. Like,
Dude,
but
it's
let's be honest, Walking Dead spinoffs have not exactly been great. So
yeah, but these two characters, I think we'll see. We don't know where Negan's coming from into this. We've talked about this because he has a wife who's expecting when we last left these heroes, and Maggie has Herschel, and I think we know that Herschel is why they're going to New York. I think Herschel's been abducted or something like that.
yeah,
I
something
think
like
that's the plot. But the fact that these two are together when they kind of hate each other, also low key want to bang each other.
that.
There's a That's fun. Lauren Cohan and Jeffrey Dean Morgan are a lot of fun to watch on screen, and I think I've seen some other character actors in some of the promo reels that will also make this a lot of fun to watch with the humans. And then they're doing more with the advanced zombies,
Mhm.
which is a part of the universe that I'm excited to learn more about, as long as they don't do it stupid.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm pumped. I want it to be good. How about that?
Me too. Me too. So why don't we be optimistic? And do you want to just do one episode next week then?
Yeah, let's take our time. I think there's only 6 in the whole season.
All right. Yeah. So let's take it. Let's do a slow burn with Dead City. So I'm excited to talk about that with you.
Yeah, same here. I'm kind of sad that Silo's over, but we'll get back to it when we can.
Great.
So if you want to tell us your thoughts about Silo, or if you're enjoying Dead City, we'll stop calling it Dead Island. Let us know. You can reach out to us on Twitter, reanimatedpcast, or our email is reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you just want to listen to all of the interesting things that we have to say, you can do that at reanimated.podbean.com.
Good job, Stuart.
It's like I've done this 300 and something times.
And until next time, thanks so much for listening. Ciao.
Toodaloo.